Eviction is a legal process that allows a landlord to remove a tenant from a rental property. This process is typically initiated when a tenant fails to comply with the terms of their lease agreement, such as not paying rent or violating property rules. Eviction is not just a simple request for someone to leave. It involves specific legal steps that must be followed to ensure both parties' rights are protected. In this video, we'll break down what eviction means, why it happens, and how the process unfolds from start to finish. Let's begin by understanding the basics of eviction and why it's an important part of rental law. Eviction is the formal legal process by which a landlord removes a tenant from their property. Unlike informal requests to vacate, eviction requires following specific laws and procedures. It's designed to protect both the landlord's property rights and the tenant's rights to due process. Eviction typically occurs when a tenant breaches the lease agreement, such as by failing to pay rent, causing property damage, or engaging in illegal activities on the premises. Understanding the definition of eviction is crucial for both landlords and tenants, as it sets the stage for the steps that follow in the process. There are several reasons why a landlord might begin the eviction process. The most common reason is non-payment of rent, where the tenant fails to pay the agreed-upon amount by the due date. Other reasons include violating the terms of the lease, such as having unauthorized pets, subletting without permission, or causing significant damage to the property. Sometimes, eviction may also occur if the tenant engages in illegal activities on the premises. Each of these reasons must be clearly documented by the landlord to proceed with a legal eviction. A lease agreement is the foundation of the landlord-tenant relationship. It outlines the responsibilities and rights of both parties, including rent amount, due dates, and rules for property use. When a tenant violates any part of this agreement, it can become grounds for eviction. That's why it's essential for both landlords and tenants to thoroughly read and understand the lease before signing. Clear lease terms help prevent misunderstandings and provide a legal basis for action if issues arise. The eviction process usually begins with a formal notice from the landlord to the tenant, often called a notice to quit or notice to vacate. This document informs the tenant of the problem, such as unpaid rent or a lease violation, and gives them a specific period to fix the issue or leave the property. The notice must comply with local laws, which often specify how much time the tenant has to respond. Serving this notice is a crucial first step and must be done properly for the eviction to proceed legally. There are different types of eviction notices, depending on the reason for eviction and local laws. For example, a pay or quit notice is given when rent is overdue, allowing the tenant to pay within a set time or leave. A cure or quit notice is used for lease violations, giving the tenant a chance to correct the issue. Finally, an unconditional quit notice requires the tenant to leave without the option to fix the problem, usually for serious or repeated violations. Knowing the right notice to use is essential for landlords. Once the appropriate notice is prepared, it must be properly delivered to the tenant. This is called serving the notice. Methods of service can include handing it directly to the tenant, posting it on the door, or sending it via certified mail. Local laws dictate which methods are acceptable and how proof of service should be documented. Proper service is critical. If the notice isn't delivered correctly, the eviction process may be delayed or dismissed in court. After receiving the eviction notice, tenants are usually given a specific period to respond. This could mean paying overdue rent, correcting a lease violation, or moving out. The response period varies by state and by the type of notice served. If the tenant resolves the issue within the time frame, the eviction process may stop. If not, the landlord can proceed to the next legal step. This period is a crucial opportunity for tenants to avoid eviction by addressing the problem. If the tenant does not comply with the notice, the landlord's next step is to file an eviction lawsuit, often called an unlawful detainer action. This involves submitting paperwork to the local court and paying a filing fee. The court then schedules a hearing where both the landlord and tenant can present their sides. Filing a lawsuit is a formal legal process, and both parties should be prepared with documentation and evidence to support their claims. Once the lawsuit is filed, the tenant receives a court summons and a copy of the landlord's complaint. The summons tells the tenant when and where the court hearing will take place. The complaint outlines the reasons for eviction and any evidence the landlord has. Tenants must respond to the summons, either by appearing in court or submitting a written answer. Ignoring the summons can result in a default judgment in favor of the landlord. Both landlords and tenants should prepare thoroughly for the court hearing. This means gathering all relevant documents, such as the lease agreement, payment records, notices, and any communication between the parties. Witnesses may also be called to testify. Being organized and having clear evidence is essential for presenting a strong case. The court will review all information before making a decision on whether the eviction should proceed. At the court hearing, both the landlord and tenant have the opportunity to present their cases. The judge listens to both sides, reviews the evidence, and may ask questions. The tenant can explain any defenses, such as improper notice or landlord's failure to maintain the property. After considering all the facts, the judge will make a decision. This hearing is the critical moment that determines whether the eviction will be approved or denied. Tenants have the right to defend themselves in court. Common defenses include claiming the landlord did not follow proper procedures, such as failing to give adequate notice or not maintaining the property as required by law. Other defenses might involve retaliation or discrimination. If the tenant proves a valid defense, the judge may dismiss the eviction case or require the landlord to correct the issue before proceeding. After hearing both sides, the judge will issue a decision. If the landlord wins, the court grants an eviction order, sometimes called a writ of possession. If the tenant wins, they may remain in the property, and the eviction process ends. The judge's decision is based on the evidence and arguments presented, as well as compliance with all legal procedures. Both parties are legally bound by the court's ruling. If the court rules in favor of the landlord, a writ of possession is issued. This legal document authorizes law enforcement to remove the tenant from the property if they do not leave voluntarily. The writ specifies a date by which the tenant must vacate. If the tenant remains after this date, the sheriff or other officials can physically remove them and their belongings. This step ensures the eviction is carried out legally and safely. Law enforcement plays a key role in the final stage of eviction. If the tenant does not leave by the date specified in the writ of possession, officers will arrive to supervise the removal. They ensure the process is peaceful and that the landlord does not take matters into their own hands. Law enforcement's involvement protects the rights of both parties and maintains order during the eviction. When a tenant is evicted, their personal belongings may be left behind. Local laws determine how these items must be handled. In some cases, landlords must store the belongings for a certain period, giving the tenant a chance to retrieve them. In other cases, items may be considered abandoned and disposed of. It's important for both landlords and tenants to understand their rights and responsibilities regarding personal property after eviction. An eviction can have serious consequences for a tenant's credit report and future housing opportunities. Once an eviction is recorded, it may appear on background checks and make it harder for the tenant to rent another property. Some landlords also report unpaid rent to credit bureaus, further impacting the tenant's credit score. Understanding these long-term effects is important for tenants facing eviction. Evictions become part of a tenant's rental history, which landlords often check before approving new tenants. A history of eviction can make it difficult to secure housing in the future. Some landlords may require higher deposits or refuse to rent to applicants with previous evictions. It's important for tenants to be aware of how eviction can affect their ability to find housing later on. Eviction records are usually public, meaning anyone can access them through court records. This transparency allows future landlords, employers, and even lenders to see if someone has been evicted. Public records can remain accessible for several years, making it important for tenants to resolve issues before they reach the eviction stage whenever possible. It's important to distinguish between legal eviction and illegal lockout. A legal eviction follows the court process, while a lockout occurs when a landlord changes the locks or removes a tenant's belongings without a court order. Lockouts are illegal in most places and can result in penalties for the landlord. Tenants have the right to due process and cannot be forced out without proper legal procedures. Some landlords may attempt self-help evictions, such as shutting off utilities or removing doors to force tenants out. These actions are illegal and can lead to lawsuits, fines, and even criminal charges. Tenants who experience self-help eviction can seek legal remedies and may be entitled to damages. It's crucial for landlords to follow the proper legal process to avoid serious consequences. Eviction cannot be used as a tool for discrimination. Landlords are prohibited by law from evicting tenants based on race, religion, gender, disability, or other protected characteristics. If a tenant believes they are being evicted for discriminatory reasons, they can file a complaint with fair housing authorities. Anti-discrimination laws are in place to ensure everyone has equal access to housing. Landlords are also prohibited from evicting tenants in retaliation for exercising their legal rights. For example, if a tenant complains about unsafe conditions or requests repairs, the landlord cannot evict them simply for speaking up. Retaliatory evictions are illegal, and tenants can defend themselves in court if they believe this is happening. Knowing your rights can help prevent unfair treatment. During the COVID-19 pandemic, many governments introduced temporary eviction moratoriums to protect tenants facing financial hardship. These measures paused most evictions for non-payment of rent, giving tenants time to recover. However, these protections were temporary, and most have now expired. It's important to check current local laws for any ongoing protections or assistance programs related to eviction. Some areas offer mediation services to help landlords and tenants resolve disputes without going to court. Mediation is a voluntary process where a neutral third party helps both sides communicate and find a solution. This can lead to payment plans, move-out agreements, or other compromises. Mediation is often faster and less stressful than a court battle, and it can help preserve the landlord-tenant relationship. Before or during the eviction process, landlords and tenants can sometimes agree on payment plans or settlements. These agreements allow tenants to catch up on rent or move out by a certain date, avoiding a formal eviction record. Settlements are usually put in writing and signed by both parties. Reaching an agreement can save time, money, and stress for everyone involved. Tenants facing eviction may qualify for legal aid or other support services. Many communities have organizations that provide free or low-cost legal advice, help with paperwork, or representation in court. These resources can make a significant difference in the outcome of an eviction case. It's important for tenants to seek help as soon as possible if they receive an eviction notice. Landlords have specific responsibilities during the eviction process. They must follow all legal procedures, provide proper notice, and avoid self-help actions. Landlords are also required to maintain the property in a habitable condition and respect the tenant's rights. Failing to meet these responsibilities can result in legal penalties and may delay or prevent eviction. Tenants also have responsibilities such as paying rent on time, following lease terms, and maintaining the property. If a tenant fails to meet these obligations, the landlord may have grounds for eviction. Tenants should communicate promptly with their landlord if they face difficulties, as early discussion can sometimes prevent eviction. The eviction process follows a general timeline. Notice is served, the tenant has time to respond, a lawsuit may be filed, and a court hearing is held. If the court rules for the landlord, a writ of possession is issued and enforced by law enforcement. The timeline can vary depending on local laws and whether the tenant contests the eviction. Understanding the typical sequence of events helps both landlords and tenants prepare for what's ahead. Eviction laws vary widely by state and even by city. Local regulations determine notice periods, acceptable reasons for eviction, and the steps landlords must follow. It's essential for both landlords and tenants to understand their local laws to ensure the process is handled correctly. Consulting with a local attorney or housing authority can provide valuable guidance. Sometimes, landlords may evict tenants for reasons unrelated to tenant behavior, such as wanting to sell the property or move in themselves. These are called no-fault evictions. Even in these cases, landlords must provide proper notice and follow all legal procedures. Tenants may be entitled to relocation assistance or additional notice, depending on local laws. Eviction rules for mobile homes can be different from those for traditional rentals. In some cases, tenants own their mobile home but rent the land it sits on. Special laws may apply, including longer notice periods or additional protections. Both landlords and tenants should be aware of these unique rules to avoid legal issues. Eviction processes for commercial properties, such as offices or retail spaces, can differ from residential evictions. Commercial leases often have different terms and may allow for faster eviction if rent is unpaid. Business tenants should carefully review their lease agreements and understand their rights and obligations under commercial law. If a tenant sublets their rental unit, both the original tenant and the subtenant may be affected by eviction. Landlords must follow the same legal process for all occupants. Subtenants should ensure their sublease is legal and understand their rights if the primary tenant faces eviction. Clear communication and proper documentation are key in these situations. Roommates may also be impacted by eviction, especially if only one person is named on the lease. In some cases, all occupants must leave, while in others, remaining roommates may be allowed to stay. The outcome depends on the lease terms and local laws. It's important for roommates to understand their legal standing and communicate openly during the eviction process. Having unauthorized pets can be a reason for eviction if the lease prohibits animals. Landlords must still follow the legal process, providing notice and an opportunity to remove the pet or correct the violation. Some laws protect tenants with service animals or emotional support animals, so it's important to know your rights and responsibilities regarding pets. After an eviction, landlords may use the tenant's security deposit to cover unpaid rent or damages. However, they must provide an itemized statement of deductions and return any remaining balance within the time frame required by law. Tenants have the right to dispute improper deductions and may take legal action if their deposit is not handled correctly. Landlords cannot shut off utilities to force a tenant to leave. Doing so is considered an illegal self-help eviction. Utilities must remain on until the legal process is complete, even if the tenant is behind on rent. Tenants should report any utility shutoffs to local authorities, as this is a violation of their rights. If a tenant disagrees with the court's decision, they may have the right to appeal. The appeal process involves filing paperwork with a higher court and may temporarily delay the eviction. However, appeals must be based on legal errors or new evidence, not simply disagreement with the outcome. Tenants should seek legal advice before pursuing an appeal. The best way to avoid eviction is through communication and early action. Tenants should notify their landlord as soon as they face financial difficulties or other problems. Many landlords are willing to work out payment plans or other solutions before starting the eviction process. Proactive steps can prevent misunderstandings and keep tenants in their homes. Landlords can access resources to help them navigate the eviction process, such as legal guides, landlord associations, and property management services. These resources provide information on local laws, best practices, and support for handling difficult situations. Staying informed helps landlords avoid mistakes and ensures the process is fair and legal. Tenants facing eviction should seek out local housing agencies, legal aid organizations, and tenant advocacy groups. These organizations can provide advice, representation, and sometimes financial assistance. Knowing where to turn for help can make a big difference in the outcome of an eviction case. Eviction is a complex legal process with serious consequences for both landlords and tenants. It involves specific steps, from serving notice to court hearings and possible removal by law enforcement. Understanding your rights and responsibilities, seeking help early, and communicating openly can help prevent or resolve eviction issues. Whether you're a landlord or a tenant, staying informed and following the law is the best way to protect your interests and ensure a fair outcome.